Y'all, I know I said that this offseason was going to be a fresh start, and we're going to try and be more positive on this Locked On Kings podcast this summer. But this draft lottery day was as depressing as it gets for the Sacramento Kings, even if the result for the Kings specifically was what we expected. How everything else played out was just peak Kings. We'll break it all down right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all off-season long. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News. And when I woke up this morning, I knew the Kings had the same percentage chance of moving into the top four and keeping their draft pick as they have for the past couple of months. So nothing that happened involving the Sacramento Kings today was new or surprising or disappointing necessarily. Well, maybe disappointing. It's disappointing that the Sacramento Kings do not have their first overall pick or first round pick, but we expected this. Right? If I were to have turned on this camera at 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. this morning and told you the Kings were going to lose their draft pick, they weren't going to move up and hit their 3.8% chance of moving up, and they would lose their draft pick to the Atlanta Hawks, you would have told me, okay, yeah, that is to be expected. Now we move on, we move forward. And we will talk about the Kings moving forward on this podcast because what losing their draft pick this year does do is finally closes that Kevin Huerter trade from 2022, which means the Kings now have their future draft assets, their future first-round picks freed up, cleared. It's a clean slate, at least on that side of things, for Scott Perry and the new Kings front office. But what we're going to lay out in this first segment, how the draft lottery played out, it's not the fault of this current front office regime that is just taking over the Sacramento Kings, but they have to inherit the fallout. It is the fallout from decisions made by the past regime that were allowed to be made and even encouraged by ownership. The Sacramento Kings end up at 13, where they were expected to end up. They do not hit their 3.8% chance of moving into the top four, and they do not hit their 0.8% chance of winning the draft lottery and getting Cooper Flagg. So the draft pick goes to Atlanta. That all played out as expected. But here is where it becomes arguably the worst case scenario for the Kings. Downright depressing. The Dallas Mavericks win the draft lottery. Now, we could spend this entire episode on conspiracy theories if we want to. I personally am not a conspiracy theorist, and that's coming from a Sacramento Kings fan that went through 2002 and what happened in the Kings and Lakers Western Conference Finals. I am not a conspiracy theorist personally when it comes to the NBA and everything being rigged, but the NBA makes it harder and harder and harder to defend that. The NBA makes it easier and easier and easier for conspiracy theorists and people who feel like everything, especially the draft lottery, is just straight up rigged. The Dallas Mavericks, stunningly out of nowhere, without talking to anybody else, trade a generational superstar in Luka Doncic to the Los Angeles Lakers in that LA market to take the torch over for LeBron James when he decides to hang it up, whether it's this year or in the next couple of years or whenever. Only to be lucky enough to hit a 1.8% chance to win the lottery and now be able to add a future superstar in Cooper Flagg to a team that already has Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis on it. It's harder to describe that not as a conspiracy theory. It's harder to look at that and say that isn't rigged. It's just poetic, or it's the everything coming full circle. And shout out Dallas Mavericks fans. Shout out Nick Angstead from Locked On Mavericks. Like, have a great time. Enjoy this. It's been, I know, a hard few months for you guys since that Luka Doncic trade. So enjoy it. I'm not talking about y'all, but man, the NBA's got some splaining to do, because this just is too convenient. And there have been some conveniences in the past, like Victor Wembanyama. Of course, he's going to go to San Antonio. We're not going to send him to Detroit. Like, there have been some conveniences in the past that we can kind of roll our eyes at and try and look past. This just feels too convenient. But regardless, how does it involve and why is it bad for the Sacramento Kings? Well, number one, the Dallas Mavericks finished below the Kings in the standings. Number two, the Dallas Mavericks had literally one fewer win than the Kings. They had 39 wins. The Kings had 40. If the Kings lose one more game, at the very least, they're in the tiebreaker situation with the Mavericks and the Bulls, and they have a chance to be in that spot. Now, that's not how the world works. Revisionist history is easy to write. But still, it just goes to show the Kings winning 4 out of their last 6 games for good vibes. It hurts you. Being in the middle hurts you. And the Dallas Mavericks, man, they had a 1% chance better than the Kings to win the lottery, and they won the lottery. And they were the team that kicked your butt on your home court and embarrassed you on national television during the play-in tournament to boot. The thing that you emphasize, making the playoffs by any means necessary, that all in on the playoffs, you were stopped by the team that won fewer games than you, still beat you, and now has a number 1 overall pick to show for it. Brutal. But, it gets worse. The San Antonio Spurs, the team that I'd say traded De'Aaron Fox to, but really the team that fleeced you out of De'Aaron Fox, now has the 2nd overall pick. Let that sink in. De'Aaron Fox gets another chance for his team to get the 2nd overall pick right, except this time it's San Antonio. You traded De'Aaron Fox to the Spurs, got basically nothing from San Antonio. And here they are with the 2nd overall pick to add to their core of Victor Wembanyama, De'Aaron Fox, and Rookie of the Year Stephon Castle. That team finished behind you in the standings. They're more than likely going to leapfrog you immediately. So the Kings aren't in as painful of a situation or as bad as a situation as a team like the Utah Jazz, who blatantly tanked. What, they win 17 games this season? Blatantly tanked to try and get Flagg. And they end up with the 5th overall pick. Or the Washington Wizards, the Charlotte Hornets, those teams that really desperately could use a superstar like Flagg, who do not get him, and instead the Mavericks do. Like, it sucks to be those teams right now. And if you want to hear depression, I guess go and listen to those Locked On podcasts. But for the Sacramento Kings, it's everything surrounding. It's the narratives surrounding the draft lottery that just make things worse and worse for Sacramento. You still want to be competitive this season? I get it. Like, that's going to be the goal. That's going to be the expectation for this team going forward. We know Scott Perry and Doug Christie, whether it's a mandate from ownership or whatever, they do not have any interest in moving backwards. They plan on, at least short term, being competitive next year. But look around you. There aren't too many teams ahead of you that are going to drop off as much as maybe you're expected to drop off. And now you have 2 teams that finish behind you that should immediately be better than you next season. Like, if the table is being set for you to be in a position in the West where you're not going to be very good. Why do and work as hard as you can to put yourself in a position to, against the odds, try and fight that? I get that you still have to play the games. I understand all that. But trying to force yourself into continuing to be mediocre in the West is just going to delay any sort of turnaround for this organization, in my opinion. Look around. This draft lottery was depressing for the Sacramento Kings. Even if they ended up in the same situation that they expected to be, without a draft pick. And now we go into an NBA draft period where Scott Perry is trying to usher in a new regime, a new era of Kings basketball, and he doesn't even have a first-round pick to do it. But what he does have is freed up future assets. We'll run through those future assets and how today's draft lottery had even a negative impact on their future assets. That's all still to come right here on the Locked On Kings podcast. Before that, though, today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by DoorDash. NBA fans, you know what time it is. It is playoff season, and man, I envy those playoff teams that don't even have to worry about the draft lottery right now. The playoffs mean big performances and even bigger rewards, and DoorDash is bringing the heat with a slam dunk deal for DashPass members during these 2025 NBA playoffs. It's called They Swoosh, You Score. Anytime a player drops 50 or more points in a playoff game, DashPass members score a free 3-piece crispy tenders combo from Wingstop the very next day. Just place an order of $20 or more, use code Wingstop50 at checkout, and that combo is yours. Crispy, delicious, and totally free. Offer is valid noon to midnight the day after the game. Terms apply. DoorDash is your go-to spot for your pre-game, post-game, during the game meals. You have so many varieties of places, establishments to choose from, all delivered right to your door without the hassle. DoorDash comes out clutch in so many different scenarios. So here's the play. You sign up for DashPass to unlock this and more exclusive deals all season long. When any player scores 50 or more points in a playoff game, DashPass members can grab a free 3-piece crispy tenders combo from Wingstop the next day with a $20 order or with a $20 or more dollar order and code Wingstop50. That's DashPass, your door to more savings, more flavor, and more ways to win. Terms apply. So before today's draft lottery played out, the optimistic way of looking at this lottery was, even if the Kings don't hit that 3.8% chance of moving up, even if the Kings lose their draft pick, it's okay, because the Kevin Huerter trade would finally be closed and over and done with, and we don't got to talk about it anymore. It's done. The Kings' future assets are no longer reliant on how that trade plays out. It gives Scott Perry freedom to do what he wants to do without having to worry about or dealing with the ramifications of a move by Monte McNair's regime. Makes perfect sense. And regardless of who won the lottery today, regardless of where the Spurs ended up, that is true. That has played out that way. Two things I want to talk about when we're talking about the Kings' future assets. Number one is what those assets are and how today's draft lottery impacted those assets. And number two, how do I put this lightly? Should Scott Perry even right now be considering using these assets in any kind of aggressive way, given not just the state of this roster, but also the state of the teams around them in the West? Let's dive in. Here are the Kings' first-round picks that they have freed up over the next handful of years. They have their 2026 first-round pick freed up. They have their 2027 first-round pick freed up, and also the San Antonio Spurs 2027 first-round pick. This was the only Spurs pick that they got as part of the De'Aaron Fox trade. Here's the problem. Even if it is unprotected, in 2027, we're talking 2 summers from now, the San Antonio Spurs are going to have Victor Wembanyama in their prime, De'Aaron Fox still in his prime, and now the 3rd overall pick 2 or 3 years into the league. The San Antonio Spurs in 2027 should be a championship contending team. So that first round pick is going to be in the 20s if they're lucky. In the low 20s if they're lucky. It's not a good pick. It's forecasting to be a bad pick. But they still own it. That's 2027. In 2028, the Kings own their own first rounder. In 2029, the Kings own their own first rounder. In 2030, the Kings own their own first rounder. And then in 2031, the Kings have an unprotected first round pick from the T-Wolves. That is the draft pick that we are holding out hope for. That is the draft pick where you're crossing your fingers going, maybe the T-Wolves, Anthony Edwards will be on another team by then, or something will go wrong for the T-Wolves or whatever. In 2031, the T-Wolves will be bad and the Kings have that unprotected first. That's how the Kings can get something of super value. Or maybe the Kings can use that pick in a future trade if they want to. But in addition to that, remember, as part of the Harrison Barnes trade to San Antonio to bring DeMar DeRozan here to Sacramento in the sign and trade deal with the Chicago Bulls, the Kings and the San Antonio Spurs in 2031 will swap draft picks. Except the Kings get the worse of the 2 picks. So in 2031, if the Kings are worse than the Spurs, who maybe still have Victor Wembanyama and maybe have another couple of titles at that point, the Spurs will still get the better draft pick than Sacramento in 2031. Now, I can't change my tune because when we were talking around like last summer, when we were talking about the trade, the sign and trade that sent DeRozan to Sacramento, I was talking like 2031, I don't care. We'll get there when we get there. It is what it is. And I still kind of feel that way. I can't just change my tune now that things aren't as exciting or optimistic in Sacramento. But I will say this, with every day, that 2031 pick swap with San Antonio just feels worse. Especially after a day where the Kings lose their draft pick and the Spurs, after getting De'Aaron Fox from the Kings for basically nothing, now have the 2nd overall pick to boot. It's painful. But the circumstances are what they are, right? It's painful and it's frustrating for us Kings fans who went through it. But for Scott Perry and his new front office, this is the hand that they've been dealt. These are their cards. They're not responsible for, they're responsible for how they play them now, but the dealer handed it to them. Monty McNair's regime handed it to them. They did not choose these cards. They did not put themselves in this position. The organization did, ownership did, but this front office regime did not. So Scott Perry now has that list of assets that I just shared with you. He has that all laid out in front of him. I am concerned with the possibility, and we'll dive into this more as the summer goes on. I right now am concerned with the possibility of the Kings and Perry using those assets for any kind of swing right now. I hate that idea. I hate it. Because again, all these teams around you in the West are getting better. The Spurs and the Mavericks will pass you. The Kings are not trending in the same direction as those 2 teams, and of course, many of the teams ahead of them in the West. They're not. And trying to make a desperate swing by using future assets to change that momentum with the old core that the Kings now have in Sacramento, to me sounds foolish. To me, sounds like you're just continuing the hell, the purgatory, the struggle. I think it is going to be in the best interest of the Sacramento Kings to ride this year out for whatever it's worth, even if that sounds horrible. to follow and watch as a fan. Ride this year out. Figure out what you can do this summer with DeMar DeRozan. Look at options for other top guys if they're even out there. Try and solidify the pieces of the core that you want going forward alongside Doug Christie. Ride this year out. Get those big contracts at least 1 year closer to being done. Then reevaluate. And hopefully, when you have your draft pick next summer, if you're as bad of a team as I'm kind of hoping the Kings will be in the West next year, I don't want them to be a middle team. I don't want them to be a play-in team. I want them to be worse than that. I do. I'm sorry. Actually, my number one wish would be for them to be a playoff team, a legitimate playoff team, and we don't have to worry about any of this draft lottery and draft pick nonsense or play-in nonsense. But I don't think that's realistic at this point. So the next best option is being worse. I personally feel that holding on to these assets right now is better for Perry and for the Kings long term than gambling with them to attempt another short-term fix right after. Even if Perry wasn't involved with this, the Kings just tried that move with acquiring Zach LaVine and the De'Aaron Fox trade, and it exploded in their face literally immediately. You can say, Matt, get over it. Matt, move on. We're still feeling the ramifications. Today was more fallout from those decisions. So you can't move on until the wound is completely healed, or at the very least stops bleeding. It's bleeding right now. Like I said at the top of the show, today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where the heck did all my money go? I know I'm not alone on that. Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just another budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you stop just managing your wealth and actually start building it. When you use Monarch, you'll be stunned with the surprising insights that you get of where your money is going, how much money you're spending in specific areas. For me and my family, it was coffee, Dutch Bros coffee specifically. I was blown away when Monarch Money showed me how much money, not just per month, per week, I was spending at Dutch Bros. There's all-in-one convenience on Monarch Money. Instead of juggling multiple apps and spreadsheets, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. And collaboration is easy. Managing money with your partners is smoother than ever, so you can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off of your first year. Today's episode of Locked On Kings is also brought to you by Hungry Root. Everyone in my house always has something going on. That includes my 3-year-old. I call this busy season. Really busy season never ends. And I don't have a lot of time, truth be told, to go grocery shopping or to especially cook healthy meals at home, especially with me working nights. That's why Hungry Root is so clutch for my family. Hungry Root is like having your own personal shopper and nutritionist wrapped into one. They take care of grocery shopping and meal planning, offering personalized recommendations based on your tastes and your health goals. Hungry Root will tailor your orders based off of what you're interested in, what you like, what you don't like, the time that you have, and the goals that you set for themselves. They're high-quality, nutritious food. You can stick to your gut-friendly, high-protein diet without spending hours of planning and a lot of money in the grocery store. Take advantage of this exclusive deal. Get 40% off of your first box, plus a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA. That's hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA. Code LockedOnNBA for 40% off and a lifetime free item. So now that the draft lottery is over, we go into draft prep phase. Well, the Sacramento Kings have second round picks, but I don't know how excited you are for me to break down the second round market and players that could potentially be available. We'll do a little bit of that over Locked On Kings over the next couple of months until the draft, but I certainly can't dive into it every day like I would or if the Kings were a draft lottery team, if the Kings had a first round pick. So this is where I ask you, what specific draft content are you looking for? And I'm not just asking that for you to plan the show for me. I also have this question for you, because I think this is going to be something really interesting to dive into, to look at, and to talk about over the next couple of months. If you're the Sacramento Kings, if you're Scott Perry, whether it's the assets on your roster or future draft compensation, because of the circumstance that you're in, financially and just with the direction of this organization, do you pursue trading your way in to the first round, or even trying to trade your way in to the draft lottery? The San Antonio Spurs have 2 lottery picks. You're not going to get number 2 overall from them, but maybe you could get 14. I don't think you're going to get 13 back from Atlanta, so might not even bother with that. There are some teams that are probably a little bit depressed with where they ended up. Can you try and move up and offer them a future package, or a DeMar DeRozan, a Domantas Sabonis, maybe even a Keegan Murray to move into the draft? Now, in order to do that, you're probably doing that on draft night, because that means there's somebody that's on the board that's available that you really, really want, that you really, really like. So it's not like the Kings can just not scout this first round draft class. They still have to pay very much attention. And if they find guys that they love, find a guy that they really, really want, now they start looking at their assets and going, okay, how do we move into the first round? I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. It's hard to talk about because it's very hypothetical, but we will dive into and we will look at players in, let's say, the late lottery range to maybe even the high teens. We're talking 15 to 20. That the Sacramento Kings could try and trade into the first round for. If you're the Kings, because of the situation that they're in, because of the timeline, and because of the fact that financially they don't have a lot of wiggle room because of the massive contracts on this roster, do you humor that possibility? And if so, is there a name right now that you have that's outside of the obvious top guys? Do you have a name that you think, oh man, I would really like to see him on the Kings. I think he might be a good target for the Kings to try and move into the first round for? Let me know. Let's talk about that. Again, that conversation will continue over the course of this summer between now and draft day. So keep an eye out for more content like that. Plus, of course, we'll talk about plenty of other trade conversations around the players on this roster. There's lots that the Kings need to do. And today was just a harsh reminder of that. All right, I want to hear your thoughts on this draft lottery. If you're a conspiracy theorist and saying the NBA is rigged, you want to lay out your argument, hey, let it fly. It's hard to argue with you. At MattGeorgeSack on Twitter. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. Leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below if you're watching on YouTube. Appreciate your support as always. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode of Locked On Kings. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.